I've been using an approach that has really helped me a lot when I struggled with learning a language, like back then with Japanese or now with Chinese. So if you also feel like you're stuck with your language and you're not really making much progress, then this will hopefully help you. I'm Alex Sanoner. I've learned over 10 languages and I make these videos to share my experience and help you learn languages more easily. In language learning, it's important that we listen to our instincts in order to understand what we should do next, what our next focus should be. And this is something that I think applies to a lot of things in life. So what does that exactly mean? Well, on our language learning journey, which usually takes several years, we have to regularly change our focus, change the activity that we're mainly doing. You know, we cannot use the same textbook for 2 years or use the same flashcards for 3 years. We need to go from one activity to the next. So when that time comes that we need to change our focus, how do we decide what we should focus on next? Well, we can ask other people for advice. We can go on YouTube and watch a video where someone recommends using this approach or that approach. But in my experience, what has helped me the most was to really listen to my instinct, listen to my inner voice to find out what I needed most. Because through our journey, our needs in the language constantly change. When we start out, we have a need to develop more of a basic understanding of the language. Then as we move through the language learning journey, our needs change to wanting to listen more to the language or wanting to speak more, wanting to have more conversations and so on. So we need to be open and flexible to regularly change the focus. And I find that our inner voice, our inner compass, if you will, is probably the best way to understand which path to take next. Because the problem is that a lot of people, they study with very rigid structures, like they have a plan that they want to practice flashcards for 30 minutes every day, or they want to do this textbook for 1 hour a day. And there's nothing wrong with that per se. And if you are actually able to push through the 30 minutes of flashcards every day, even when you don't feel so much like it, that is actually very admirable. But if you feel that you would really rather watch a film in your target language rather than doing flashcards, then please watch a film. Because if your inner voice tells you that you need to watch a film more, then that will help you in that moment much more than pushing your way through the flashcards. And that is also because, you know, language learning happens through a lot of factors. There's a lot of things that influence how well we learn. And one of these things is our emotional state. So if you're doing something which you really don't like doing, you will create a lot of negative emotions in yourself. And that does not help you to learn. That really creates this resentment that slows down your learning. But if you watch a film and you really enjoy watching this film, it creates positive emotions in you, and those positive emotions fuel your learning and help you to retain much better what you learned during that session. So am I saying that we should not have a study plan? Not at all. It's really good to have a study plan, and that's something that I was really bad at in my earlier years. I never had any plan. I just did everything based on intuition. But having a study plan is really good, but it has to be a flexible plan, and it has to be a plan that can adapt itself based on our changing needs. So it should be a study plan which leaves enough space for our inner voice, for our compass, our instinct to come up and say, hey, now I feel like I need to listen more. Now I feel like I need to speak more. And so to allow the plan to adapt to these changing needs. You know, when I was learning Japanese, I started out with an app which I found there called Human Japanese, which I really liked a lot. I spent maybe 1 or 2 months on that app, learning all the basics, hiragana, katakana, and so on. Then I bought myself a textbook and spent another two months more or less on the textbook, learning again for a second time the basics of the language. After that, I had only reached around the middle of that textbook, and I could have continued and finished the whole textbook, but I felt that I had spent enough time now through the app and this textbook on reading the language, and I felt that I really wanted to listen to the language. I really wanted to hear it more. So I just dropped the textbook and I started watching anime in Japanese, and that was also actually new to me because up to that point I had always just watched dubbed anime. And watching it in Japanese for the first time exposed me to what the language sounds like, and I learned a completely new face of this language, which is the rhythms of the language, what the language feels like, what it sounds like, how people speak it, what emotions they have. And yes, I know that the way people speak in anime is not always the most natural way, but that aside, with every different focus and every different tool, we learn a different aspect of the language. So with a textbook, we learn what this language looks like, what the text looks like, what the words look like. But watching a film gives us a completely different view of that language. So I spent probably a month only watching anime and not spending so much time on the textbooks anymore. After that, I felt, okay, now I've spent time with the textbook, I've spent time listening. I have not been speaking much. I haven't spoken the language much. So I went online and looked for a language tutor. And back then, I didn't have money to pay a tutor. I was still at university. So I found a language exchange partner, somebody who wanted to learn German and teach Japanese. And so I would spend every week 2 or 3 hours with him, speaking 1 hour Japanese, 1 hour German. And it wasn't until 1 year later that I had found a new balance where I would regularly, throughout every week, listen a little bit, read a little bit, speak a little bit. But initially, I felt that I really had to spend dedicated amounts of time, like 1 month on the textbook, then 1 month speaking, 1 month listening, in order to slowly build myself up these domains. And there I relied a lot on my instinct to understand what I should do next. Now, this instinct, of course, is not the same for everybody. Not everybody feels equally well what they should do next, and especially if you've never learned a second language, you will not naturally know so well what you should do next. So the first foreign language which you learn is always the most difficult one because it's the first time that you go through that process. But over time, you will develop this instinct more and more that will tell you which activity you should focus on next. And you know, these inner instincts, it's a very human thing, and it's something that we have in a lot of other parts of our lives. For example, if you've been eating too much sugar for some time, then your body will tell you that you need more water. You start craving water or vegetables or just something in order to get yourself back into balance when you're out of balance. Or if you have not been eating enough sugar, you will start craving sugar. So the body naturally has these ways of telling us what we need. And with language learning, it's very similar, that our experience and our feelings will tell us if we need to practice more speaking, if we need to practice more listening, and so on. So what if you don't have any inner voice telling you that you should focus on this or that, but you just struggle generally with language learning? You don't really feel like learning anything. Well, in that case, it can be helpful to stick to a more rigid plan and to push through that plan if you really don't feel the motivation to learn the language at all. But at some point, I would also ask myself why you really want to learn that language and why you don't feel motivated. What about this process takes that motivation away? And it might be that you really don't want to learn this language. I mean, there are languages that I started learning, but it just I never developed much of a passion for them. Like, for example, Polish. I started learning it twice. But it's just, I don't know. I'm just not so passionate about it. And that's fine, you know. You don't have to be passionate about every language. But Japanese is a language that I'm very passionate about. So in my case, in Chinese, what I've been struggling the most with recently is understanding what people are saying, and that's why I've been working on my comprehension. And that's why I will now go and watch some more videos in order to get my Chinese also ready for my trip next week, where I'll be going to Taiwan, because I'll be attending the Polyglot conference there. And if you also happen to be at the Polyglot conference, that will be really cool. So if you want to meet me, message me on Instagram. I will also be giving a presentation there if you're interested in attending it. Otherwise, if you've recently been struggling with finding time in learning languages, then I made a really cool video here where I talk about a lot of useful tips on how to find more time in language learning. Thanks a lot for watching this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye. I've been using an approach that has really helped me a lot with